The countdown to opening day is officially on, and expectations are building for this Philadelphia Phillies team. One underlying storyline that has caught plenty of fans' attention entering spring training is the uncertain future of fan favorite Ranger Suarez. The homegrown talent is entering the final year of his contract and does seem primed for a massive payday this coming season. I want to break down exactly what he said in regards to the situation and why Phillies fans should be jumping for joy at his approach at this current time. I want to talk about what Ranger said, how this implicates both the full pitching staff moving forward and the outlook for this Phillies team. So let's dive right into things. And first, want to start off with this headline here saying Philadelphia Phillies All-Star addresses uncertain future with the team, with a little picture of Ranger Suarez here. If you did not know the backstory, you would be in panic mode here, as I was when I first clicked on this. But luckily, it is exactly what fans want to hear, as Ranger Suarez says, quote, "It's about staying in Philly. This is my childhood club, my childhood organization. I've played here since I was really young. All I think about is staying here. I want to pitch here for the rest of my career." Ranger Suarez on his uncertain future. Well, Ranger, luckily for you, that is exactly what myself and I believe the large majority of the fan base feel as well. That I do think Ranger Suarez is a guy who has earned his stripe, paid his dues, and delivered for this Philadelphia Phillies team. On top of him being a homegrown talent that has taken those next steps year in and year out, he's a guy that you just straight up want on your baseball team. You cannot raise that guy's heart rate no matter what the situation is. He is cool, calm, and collected on the mound. You will never find a better fielding pitcher than Ranger Suarez by my money. And he's a guy that's willing to do whatever the team wants him to do. He'll pitch out of the bullpen. He'll close out games as he's done in the playoffs for this Phillies team. He'll serve as a part of the starting rotation. Whatever you need Ranger Suarez to do, he is willing. And he's still got plenty of years left in those arms at this state in the game. So I do support Ranger Suarez getting this massive extension. I just want it to be in Philadelphia that it does happen now. Now, to talk a little bit about why it may not, and then I want to reflect on what exactly to make of his season, which was a bit of a tale of two halves last year. But do want to start with the end of this article here, which writes, after recently committing nearly $300 million to extend his star rotation teammates, Wheeler and Nola, the Phillies may not be able to afford his rising price tag. Suarez turns 30 in August, so it might be wise for Philadelphia to move on rather than invest in the decline phase of his career. Accordingly, Suarez needs to prove that he's worth keeping beyond 2025 and potentially be open to a hometown discount if he wants to stay. Now, this is where the conversation gets particularly interesting, is I have a really hard time figuring out where exactly Ranger Suarez market is in the grand scale of pitchers. I personally think it makes it more valuable that he is more versatile, that you can pitch him in a variety of situations. This is not a guy that you can lump into just a starting pitcher type. And it is interesting. I'll say the moves that the Phillies have made this offseason, primarily here trading for Jesus Luzardo, bringing in a guy like Joe Ross who has a little bit of experience as a starter, can be a swing guy, things like that. It does feel like they're at least prepared for the potential of Ranger Suarez leaving. And by the way, the indications that he's given from his actions for this offseason, it did feel like he was going to drive a hard bargain here. Talk about, bringing in the best agent in the world to maximize his deal and all these type of conversations. But if he is speaking like this candidly in spring training, I do think it's a really encouraging sign for him wanting to stay. And by the way, with Luzardo specifically here, for all the skeptics of Ranger Suarez directly, I kind of have my same wandering eye on Jesus Luzardo. Lit up 3 consecutive home runs in the spring training game as of today. I'm recording this last night by the time this is dropping here. Very funny interaction because Rob Thomson was on ESPN for all 3 of those home runs there, doing a little in the dugout interview with Rob Thomson, and it's just home run after home run after home run that Luzardo is on. I'm not going to judge based off what we're seeing in spring training. Zack Wheeler, by the way, pitched really poorly as well. Ranger himself, luckily, looked excellent here, but the point being, I know what these guys can do to an extent. Luzardo, a guy I'm still kind of feeling out. And to kind of reflect on him as a whole, it was the down year for Jesus Luzardo last year. Pitched in just 12 games, 66.2 innings, and the numbers were pretty atrocious. 8.2 hits per 9 innings, 9 home runs allowed across those 12 games. That's a 5.0 ERA, a 1.2 whip here. This is something the Phillies are buying into the bounce back year that he can have, that he certainly has flashed far more potential than he showed last season. And by the way, to reflect on Ranger Suarez last year, 27 games that he pitched in, just 14 home runs allowed, 150.2 innings. He struck out 145 over that time, a 3.46 ERA, and a 1.2 whip there. But really, it was a tale of two halves for Ranger Suarez. And to reflect on that directly here, that we do know to pull up To start off with, I wanted to give out this stat that through June 26th, he had a 10-2 record and a 1.83 ERA, which was the first ever, which led to his first ever All-Star selection. And then the bad is when things fell apart. And this article writes, in July, the fairy tale season came to a screeching halt. He lost 3 straight games in back tightness in his final start of the first half, put him on the 15-day IL, which kept him. And by the way, to just kind of continue on from here, we did not see the same version of Ranger Suarez for a while there. Now, to his credit, and I give him the utmost respect for this dude battled in the playoffs, man, and delivered the way the Phillies needed him to. He was far from the reason that they did lose to them Mets in that series. In fact, I would argue, if anything, he was the reason why they didn't. That he delivered, and while it wasn't always pretty, that dude just grinds it out. That he guts up, and he's going to get the job done. That's who Ranger Suarez is, and that's why I have a great deal of respect to him. Now, to talk a little bit further about this here, did want to pull up this portion of the article as well, which states, and by the way, I love the visual of Ranger Suarez, and watching this video, seeing it in his voice, even though he still goes through the translator here, did give a little more personal feel to me of the belief of this guy really does want to come back to Philadelphia, which is awesome. But the article writes, Suarez, who is entering his final season before free agency, shined in his spring training debut, holding the reigning AL champions to just 1 hit, a single, and no walks. He also struck out 2, threw 19 of his 30 pitches for strikes, and flashed an improved changeup. After the game, the 29-year-old lefty spoke with reporters about his uncertain long-term future with Philadelphia. And very cool. Again, I'm not reading too much into spring training. This is sort of my message on it. There's guys that are certainly trying things out. There's guys that this is more important to than others. The young guys in particular, I am leaning towards that. Gabriel Rincones Jr., who our very own Luke Arcani will be doing with an interview with tomorrow night, so make sure to stay tuned for that he will be ripping that out. But the point being that I am judging the young guys that we're getting our first look a little differently than Zack Wheeler. I'm not going to be panicking that he lit up a ton of runs and looked pretty rough on the mound out here. I'm going to brush that off too. Maybe he's working through, trying out some new stuff, whatever the case may be. If that happens on opening day, a little different reaction from me, and I would guess the rest of the fan base here. Now, to talk about the long-term outlook from here, I do think the money is most important to come into play. And it does feel like the tides have turned in this Phillies organization, that pitching has become a greater priority. They've put their money where their mouth is and have locked up Aaron Nola and Zack Wheeler on long-term contracts. That Wheeler under contract through 2027, so 3 more years of service for him, making $42 million in each. Aaron Nola, a little bit more of a unique contract here. He's under contract until 2030, where he'll be an unrestricted free agent, making over $24 million per year there. And that's where the questions get a little interesting. Christopher Sanchez, to his credit, was locked up this past offseason, and a very team-friendly deal that we're going to look towards in the future. In age 28, he is now under contract until 28, where we start to see the club options kick in. I'm pretty confident that Christopher Sanchez, this is going to age as a pretty good deal when looking at those numbers there, but you do have that out if that's how things present, and that's 3 years down the line, or 4 years down the line, until we're even having those conversations. But that is just 3 pitchers there as a part of the staff, and that is where the conversation gets interesting. Both Ranger Suarez and Jesus Luzardo, well, Luzardo under 1 more season of team control, as he'll have an arbitration year next year. Ranger Suarez, a straight-up free agent to this point. One of those guys absolutely needs to be a part of rotation. Another part that certainly comes into the conversation here is Andrew Painter. How soon is he ready, and is he ready to be a full-time starter to the extent that you are in the top 5 of a rotation? It looks on the forefront, the early part of that top 5, that everyone's talking about Painter like he could be a future number 1, the next potential Aaron Nola within this situation. Maybe he could even be better than Nola from some of the conversations or some of these statements that are being had out there. I need to see it before I'm ready to put the carton before the horse here and fully believe that that is the case, but the point being that you do have a little bit of optionality in it. I kind of think this might be open competition between Jesus Luzardo and Ranger Suarez this season. I understand there is the additional year of team control with Luzardo, but I just have more faith in who Ranger is as a pitcher, man. We've seen this guy do it for years. I do think that there's an element or a style of pitching that he's different. He is a guy that is going to force ground outs. He's going to, he knows how to pitch in a way that I don't really feel about some of these other options here. Luzardo, I certainly don't feel that way. Even Christopher Sanchez, I feel like he brings his best stuff, but Ranger just has a way to get hitters to hit into where he wants the ball to go in that kind of way that I have a ton of respect for. Keeping the ball on the ground, big ground ball pitcher there. I just love the way that Ranger Suarez approaches hitters, approaches the game, and just delivers and produces for this Phillies team. So I understand there will be some difficult conversations to have. I kind of think the Phillies are sort of setting this up to be go set your market here. If Ranger Suarez pitches incredibly to start the season, then all of a sudden it becomes a little more difficult. But there's also the world where maybe that second half of the season shows up in the first half half of this year. And while that would be unfortunate from the Phillies' perspective, you also can look at that as a world of maybe you can capitalize on a little bit of value by signing him now type thing. So we'll be really curious when these conversations are had. I would probably guess that the Phillies at least try to have these contract conversations before they get to the actual free agent period next season. But who knows? We'll see what Rangers' outlook as well. He might be having these exact same thoughts and talking through it from a different angle of if I pitch phenomenal to start the season, all of a sudden I'm walking to a couple more $1 million per year moving forward. And that's a totally fair bet on yourself approach there. So ultimately, I just hope Ranger Suarez is back in a Phillies uniform. It feels really good to have him reciprocate those feelings and that to be his mindset as well. But the bottom line is money talks, and we'll see if the Phillies are going to speak the loudest with that one there. But shout out to Ranger. Shout out to him for delivering in spring training, one of the few pitchers these days that we have seen. Ultimately, not going to throw any panic buttons up until the regular season starts, but very, very excited to see this team coming together and Ranger Suarez continue to be a key part of it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments there. Your level from 1 to 10 for how badly you want Ranger Suarez back, because I'm like a 9.3 there. I'm pretty close to a 10 straight up. Ranger, one of my favorite Phillies on this team, and it would break my heart a little bit to see him walk away. So happy to hear him have the same approach there. Happy to see you guys tuning into this video. So once again, make sure you are smashing that subscribe button, dropping a like on this video here. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest, Phillies Digest. Peace.